Just in Time, a memoir of faith and a fight for life from Joe Lafferty. And with this, welcome back to Inspiringly Different or Inspirierend Anders. My name is Luca Beutel, and with me together today is the author of the book, Joe Lafferty. Hi, Joe. How's it going?
Hey, Luca. Guten Tag. And it's good to be with you. I'm honored. This is my first podcast ever in Germany and Europe. I have done other international podcasts in Canada, but this is my first one in Europe, and I am honored to be part of what you're doing and very honored to be part of your inspiring messages.
I'm honored that you took your time and came on, and also already took the time that we could meet beforehand. So I really appreciate that from your side. I mean, it's an awesome story you got to talk about. I got your book here, Just in Time.
Who is that? Who is that ugly guy on the cover?
I can't tell. He's wearing sunglasses all the time. Also in the book, he's hiding. What's it about? How did it come that you wrote a book and a memoir of faith and a fight for life? So it sounds serious.
It is serious, even though the name is Lafferty, and that's probably Scotch Irish for comedian. I've had a very serious life, and it has been a life of struggles and trials, and also immense blessings. One thing that I learned from writing the book, which I have listened to some of your English-speaking podcasts, and what I noticed from the theme of the podcast that I did listen to is true in mine as well, which is that when you once you work through the struggles, you realize that the lessons learned are the truest blessings. And I have had a loving family my entire life. My father and mother both worked hard, so they were in unions. We used my father's health care, and the union provided good health care, so health care was never an issue for me. But, that is little comfort when you're 8 years old and they tell you that you have cancer and a 70% chance of survival. So Oof. I've been through it, and I wanted to put down, and I can tell you more about what I've been through, but I wanted to put down an inspiring message. So being on your podcast is awesome, because the reason I did the book is to be inspiring and to inspire others that they can get through things. Struggles are very different. I come from a place with a loving family, and my parents were married all through my toughest youth, and ultimately got divorced, but that's irrelevant to my story. I had a family around me. I had good friends, a good community of people around me. People knew me. In the early 80s, pediatric cancer was not common. So I became that cancer kid who's a swimmer in my community. And I was a pretty accomplished swimmer. So people knew who I was and was swimming while I was on chemo. And while some kids snickered, and I'm sure behind my back said something, I didn't notice it and didn't care about it anyway. When I was 8 years old and found out I had cancer, the previous year I had lost 3 grandparents. Technically two grandparents and a great-grandparent. So I'd already lost 3 grandparents in the span of a year, about 13 months. And then the following July 14th, I found out that I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that I would need to go through a chemotherapy protocol 5 times to put it down. And that was going to take 2 to 2.5 years, and I blessedly got through it in 18 months because the side effects were minimal for me, and sometimes not so minimal for others.
What do you mean with that?
Well, as is today, the medicine they give you to kill the cancer, they haven't now it's gotten a lot better since the early 80s, but they can't target specific cancer cells. If they could, chemotherapy wouldn't be so devastating to your body. So what chemotherapy does, it can go in and kill a lot of cells and a lot of good cells. When you're on chemotherapy, they're always talking about your white blood count, which is what you use to fight off infection. People very close to me, my mother-in-law, she was going through chemo about 5 years ago, and she was going through maintenance chemotherapy for lung cancer, and she was still working and once a week, and she had a treatment, and she got pneumonia on top of just after her treatment, and she didn't have the white blood cells to fight off the pneumonia. So, and we're seeing that around the world right now with people who are older and having compromised immune systems. If you have a low white blood count because you're older, or you're asthmatic or diabetic, or you have some other compromising chronic illness that keeps your blood count low, your white blood count low, and then you happen to get COVID, it's much worse and you can't fight it off as easily. So chemotherapy wipes out all the bad cells and a lot of good cells. So you go through these peaks and valleys of, your blood count, and sometimes you have to wait until your white blood cells come back up before they can hit you again with some chemotherapy.
Okay. And what exactly have been the negative effects on the people surrounding you? I mean, I could imagine that it's been because you were a child and therefore were sick all the time, or...
Well, when my father was setting me up for the rest of my life, when he and my mother sat me down, sadly, the way it came up, it happened on my sister's birthday that they had to tell me because they couldn't wait any longer.
I mean...
Yeah. I jokingly say maybe they could have waited a day, but it was time to start and it was time to tell me. And my sister is one of my heroes because she had to power through all those times where, when you have a sick child or a child with special needs, the family largely and sometimes and largely has to collapse around the sick child. My sister was still loved. She still was a dancer and ultimately a cheerleader and was, great at both. And she's very smart. But, when you get attention because you're throwing up in the other room from chemotherapy, your parents have to focus on you. But, she had a good childhood, and we fought like brothers and sisters. She didn't pity me. And we fought and we were close, and she's only 14 months older than I am, so we're very close in age. And as we got older, we became very good friends. Had some of the rivalries in high school when she would borrow my big sweatshirts or my sweatpants. But because bigger clothes are comfortable, right? So I'm bigger than she is, and she would borrow my clothes, and that would anger me. But so and the long-term effects of the chemotherapy are what led me to several other medical challenges in my life, because during my chemotherapy my pancreas was inflamed. I had pancreatitis for about a month, and when I was 13 years old, finishing my high school first year, my freshman year of high school, I found out that I was an insulin dependent diabetic. And at that point, it crushed my dream of going into the military. I had a thought in the back of my head that I wanted to go to the Naval Academy. And I really wanted to do that, maybe even go there and swim or play football, because I had found football my first love, and I gave up swimming. And I thought I might want to go to the Naval Academy. And when I found out I was an insulin-dependent diabetic, they said, you can do anything. You can play football and swim and do all the things you do. Oh, by the way, you can't be in the military. So that was devastating to me, and no one likes to be told they can't do something.
Yeah, especially something you want to do. I mean, you wanted to go to the military and they tell you, not going to happen.
I like being part of teams, and I like working my way up and being part of a team. So that's kind of the ultimate command structure like there is in the military. You start, and as hard as you work, you can work your way up. And I thought that was very attractive to me. So I was an insulin-dependent diabetic, type 1 diabetic. I got to play high school and small college football. And after that, I started working in college and professional sports on the business end.
Which position did you play in football? Just out of curiosity.
In high school, I was a quarterback, and then my junior year, we had a sophomore who was better than I was. So he got moved into the backup role. So I moved to receiver. And it was funny because we had a couple former quarterbacks that were my age turned receiver. And when we would go in, we would run the plays in every play. And my first touchdown that John threw me, I ran in and I gave him the play with a motion, and he looked at me and I said, watch the safety. If the safety doesn't move, throw it to me. Because we all knew who was going to be open. So we ran the play. The safety didn't move, and I was running straight down the field all by myself. And he underthrew the ball, but I still caught it and ran for my first touchdown.
That makes a good receiver.
Yeah, so quarterbacks, being able to read a coverage helped me, and I went off to college as a receiver, and I loved it. For some reason, I loved getting knocked around and ending up at the bottom of a pile. And when I stopped playing, I missed that. I missed bumping into people, and that's a little sick, but it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun being part of an intense team like that.
Yeah, I know a few. I mean, the German Football League is not even close to the size of the American, the National Football League. But I know a few players, and I know a few who said, yeah, I've been receiver, and now I'm cornerback because I like hitting more than getting hit. And yeah, I can kind of relate to that. I mean,
it's easier, believe it or not, it's very much easier, and your friend hit on it. Maybe accidentally. It's easier to hit people than to be hit. There's a well-known, and I'm not going to out him. There's a well-known football player from my area. He's not much young. He's 6 years younger than I am. He was well-known. He was a well-known high school nationally player, well-known college player. But when he was a running back in high school, and when he went off to his college, I heard through the grapevine that he was running the ball and he kept getting hit really hard by the linebackers when he ran the ball. So he switched, and then he became a linebacker and did very well for himself in college, and even played for a while in the NFL as a linebacker. And one other NFL guy whose quote I like, LaDainian Tomlinson, who was a famous running back for many years. His quote is, being a running back in the NFL is like getting hit by a car 16 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, if you watch the NFL regularly, you should probably know how hard they get hit sometimes, and how astonishing it is that they line up again. They're like, just shake it off and line up again. Next run, next play.
Yeah, imagine being at your local market, and there is someone 10 yards away from you, and you start running as fast as you can for that 10 yards and just put your shoulder in their back and knock them down.
I mean, even more. I mean, you start running and he starts running too. And you just collide like, all right, it's going to happen.
It's a violent game. I'm sure at some point we're going to look back and think, wow, why did we ever do that? But it's a great game. It takes a special kind of person, and I've coached enough guys that have gone on to the NFL, and I still know them personally. Every one of them is a genetic freak. They have something about them that doesn't make sense. One young man, he was skinny. And he went off to college and he played at Michigan. And I would see him, he would return punts, and he was a receiver. He'd catch balls and, in traffic and get hit. And every time he got hit, I just would think, oh, I don't think he can get up. And he would just bounce right up. And he went off to the NFL, and man, he got knocked around. He made people miss a lot, and he was really good. but he would get hit so hard, and he would just bounce back up. So he's made of something that I'm not made of, right? I don't know what he's made of, but it's not this. It can't be the stuff I'm made of, because
No.
those guys are all genetic freaks. And you look at someone like who I know, Rob Gronkowski, who's very famous. When you're 6'6" and your arm span is 7 feet, you shouldn't be able to move and run like him.
No.
And that's why no one can cover him. Someone can be as fast as him, and someone can be as tall as him, but no one is tall enough and fast enough to run with him and defend him. So that's why he's such a, what they call a lineup nightmare, a matchup nightmare. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to match someone up with him. You have to do it with multiple people, and then when you put 2 or 3 people on him, someone else is
another
open.
One. Yeah, another one will be open. Yeah, it's true. You coached Rob Gronkowski in high school or in college?
In high school. Yeah.
In high school.
So I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is Heinz Field.
I see it.
Home Heinz. Well, that's a German name, Heinz, right? I see Heinz.
Heinz, yeah. Heinz ketchup.
Best ketchup in the world, hands down. Nothing else. When I was a poor college student and would buy any type of product just to have it and eat it, and when I was a poor worker, I would still buy Heinz ketchup and Kraft macaroni and cheese. You cannot. I'd rather not eat than have some, some other kind of ketchup. Yes, you can't. You never went off brand from Heinz and Kraft macaroni and cheese. But no, I coached 14 years of high school football at my alma mater.
Wow.
Yeah, I coached in 1992 when I got suspended from college, and I coached in 95 and 96, and then I coached from 2002 to 2013. And in that span, I coached 14 guys that went on to the NFL at some level. Some of them I coached them directly. When Rob Gronkowski was there, I was coaching quarterbacks and tight ends. And Rob's from Buffalo, and his brothers all graduated from a high school in Buffalo. But Rob was a problem child, and his parents were having some tough times, but his father was traveling, and Rob got into trouble, and he was going to be suspended for 6 games in Buffalo. He wasn't going to be allowed to play 6 games, and his father said, "Well, let's move to Pittsburgh, where his father had fitness stores, and he was turning 3 stores into 2. They were doing renovations, and he said, 'You're going to move there with me. I'll control you. I'll control you.'" And they happened to pick our high school for the area because it was in close proximity to one of their stores that they were remodeling, and we had a reputation for being able to teach people how to run block, because knowing how to run block is something his other sons never did, and he wanted Rob to know how to block, because that's the thing about Rob too, is he's not only just a great there have been plenty of tight ends, and I air quote tight ends, that have been great receivers, but Rob is a great receiver. On top of that, he's as good as an offensive lineman that's next to him. He knows how to block. He does it well. They use it to his advantage. I saw a touchdown last week or two with Tampa Bay where he put up his hands to block just for a second, and the guy went to go past him, and he just opened up, and Brady threw the ball, touchdown. So you don't know if he's gonna. He could line and that's the thing when you're lined up against him, because they teach you on the defense to jam the tight end. You don't let the tight end just run, because you want to hold him up so the people behind you have a moment to read. So you jam the tight end. Now, if you jam the tight end, that's different than engaging him and trying to get past him. So if you kind of stand up to jam him, he might be blocking. He'll run you over. Or he might if you lunge at him to try to get past him, he might just swim past you. So you've lost either way, and he's a hard person to read on that. So that's another reason why he's a nightmare to deal with on the field. But I coached him and several other guys that have gone on to the NFL. 2 two that are from my area are still in the NFL. Miles Sanders is the premier running back for the Philadelphia Eagles. And Quentin Jefferson is a starting defensive lineman tackle for the Oakland Raiders. And he had a nice career.
Las Vegas, Las Vegas.
Yeah, he's in Las Vegas. Yeah. He had a nice career in Seattle. And then last year he played in Buffalo. And he signed a couple-year deal out in Las Vegas. So, and he was just back in Pittsburgh. Nice. And the Raiders beat the Steelers. So I'm sure that was fun for him to go home and get a win.
Sure it was. You're still in contact with the guys, or only a little bit?
As much as you can be.
Yeah.
Well, my head coach taught us, not to ask for things, and I don't reach out. I don't have any. If I took down this screensaver, I don't have a lot. I don't have autographs. I buy my own T-shirts with teams on them. I don't ask for things. I've stayed in contact. Miles, I was only there for Miles' freshman year, and then when I stopped coaching, I know him through the coaches now, and I know he remembers me. He's a good young man, takes care of his family, and that's the other thing. These guys get into the NFL, and they're making great money, and they have families. Miles takes care of his mom, and takes care of her, and I'm sure some other family members, and the other guys that go on to the NFL, they can help out their family. So I don't want to be a drain on them when I've gone to games. I've offered to buy my own tickets, but sometimes I say, hey, Rob was like that, Gronkowski. If I made the trek up I haven't been to a game in Tampa, and I do spend time not far from there in Florida. But when I would go up to New England from Pittsburgh, another coach and myself, Rob would get us tickets and a parking pass. Now, the players' tickets, you'd think are like, 50-yard line or in a box. No, they were way up high. But, very thankful. You can see the game from up there. I like that. You can see the game from up there. There's a little more room to move around than down low. So, those guys are really good about that. They love when you come see them on the road. They like to see the familiar faces. And so it's a lot of fun, and I stay in contact with them as much as they allow, because like I said, I've had players move off to cities, and we were in close contact, and they move to a city and they get involved in local politics and local community. But when I see them at home in our alma mater on a field, I was just back, we just had an alumni golf outing, and I saw a lot of my former players. One NFL guy was there, but other former players, it's this coach, and they come over and, bear hug you and tussle your hair like, like I'm a little kid to them. But it's funny because, now they're grown men, and they're teachers and firemen and police officers and money managers. And they run they're fathers, so they run the gambit of what they're doing. And it's always good to see a young man that you had the smallest hand in helping develop. And I'm not having any children of my own. I now have a couple stepsons, but earlier not having any kids of my own. I love when those guys have success, and if I've inspired them, to bring it back to our point, if I've inspired them by them watching me go through what I went through, and I was coaching when I died in July of 2008. So when I showed back up, the guys' eyes were very big and came over to me, and they signed cards and sent them to the hospital, and I'm sure some of them fed off that.
I'm believing that. I'm believing that strongly. I mean, I can a little bit relate, not as much as you. I was a soccer coach for 5 years, also of a youth team in my spare time, and you have a bond to them. If you are a coach, you bond with them. And I now see them years later, and they are grown up working. Like, I'm 28, they are now 20 or what, bigger than I am, stronger than I am. And I'm like, come on, time's running, man, time's running. But I agree, it's so much fun, and it can be your family if you are into it, and if you are willing to put enough energy and time into your team. then it can become your family, and then you can grow from each other and inspire each other and motivate each other. And yeah, I agree with you totally.
Well, I was one. Let me just put a button on that if you don't mind. One thing I was very blessed. So I didn't have any sons of my own when I coached, so I was never partial to anyone. But from day one, when I started coaching as a 19-year-old in 1992, my head coach said to me, he was my head coach when I played there. Now he's the head coach I'm working for and in meetings with him. And the thing, he had two rules, which he inherited from his high school coach. And the two rules were coach every kid every day and treat every kid as if he were your son. And that doesn't mean that, you try and get your son in there. He meant it in the way like, this is your son. And there's a big difference, which I learned early on. I never did this, but there's a big difference. And because when we're coaches, sometimes we cuss and we use. There's a big difference between saying, hey, what you did was stupid. I taught you better than that. We went over this. I showed you on the board. You said you understood it, and then you did this. That's different from saying what you did was dumb and you are dumb. Because when you teach someone and you walk through it and you say it, you're like, hey, okay, we just talked about this. Why did you do that? That was dumb. And what the combination of those two things, coach every kid every day and treat everyone as if you're your son. Early on, kids understand that you love them and they bond with you. And I coached in an area where there were a lot of single moms. It was very culturally diverse. When I went to school there, it was half black, half white. Over the years, it's changed a little bit. So I've always been a culturally diverse area. A lot of single moms, both white and black. My area runs the gambit from poverty to rich. I grew up kind of in the middle between the two in my own neighborhood. So I got to know and work with a lot of people. And what my head coach was doing was creating a team through love. So you can be hard on that young man, just like a parent. You can be hard on that young man because he knows you love him. And you're going to be there tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next week and next year. You're going to be there for them. And that's what those two rules built. So you may have a young man who comes in with a bad attitude, who doesn't want to listen to directions, but they learn quickly and they understand that you're there and you want the best for them. So you relish in their victories, whether it be in practice or in a game.
Yeah, I agree, Joe, and that's you put it in beautiful words.
It's just through experience and listening.
Yeah. Joe, so what happened when your dream was shattered to going to the army? What happened for you?
Navy, but yes. So when that was shattered,
Navy,
I went off.
Navy.
Yeah, I went off to college and I wanted to be in business, marketing and sales. When I was 12, right after my chemotherapy and radiation stopped, I was 11, 12 years old. And I knew I wasn't the best athlete. I was always one of the smallest cogs in any team I played on. I had to fight for every down I got on the field. But I loved practice. I loved doing it. So I loved the sport of football. And when I was 12 years old, I started speaking locally for the Leukemia Society, being a spokesperson. They'd called my doctor's office, pediatric oncologist's office, and the new executive director had an idea. Instead of putting the young people up there with bald heads and baseball caps who have cancer and leukemia, they wanted someone who had already been through it and was a success story, because they're trying to raise money for research. So they want people to know, hey, the research is working. That was George's idea. So they called my doctor and they said, hey, we need a kid who's been through it. If he's sports oriented, that's good. We have a lot of sporting events, but we need a kid who can talk. And my doctor, I'm sure, said something to the effect, I have a kid that doesn't shut up. So I went down and met them. Yes, right here. I went down and met in the office, and they had like a little spread out for me, and it was like I was the star, and I went and sat in a conference room with the executive director, and he started asking me questions, and I was as eloquent as a 12-year-old as I could be, I guess. And we came up with like bullet points, and what we were doing was developing what they call in politics a stump speech. So when I spoke anywhere, here are the bullet points that I want to get across. How many people die, how much of your money goes, what we can do. And I had a line that said, people like you 25 years ago invested in research, and I'm alive today. Please donate money so we can save more lives. And so I did that from the ages of 12 to 18. And I got involved with the local college football team and became a ball boy, a youth manager. And I got to meet some of the biggest names in sports. And I saw how college sports worked behind the scenes. And I got to see how sports work behind the scenes professionally. So when I went to college, I said, I want to be in public relations and marketing in sports. And that was just at the early 90s, at the beginning of what they now call sports marketing. And my college did it in a certain way. They gave us classes in psychology and biology and kinesiology. So they wanted you to understand how the body works. So if you go sell tennis shoes or you're going to sell sporting equipment, you understand how the body works. So it's not just advertising and public relations. They want you to be well-rounded. And that my college also believed in psychology classes for people who are in sales and marketing and public relations. Because if you understand how people think and why they do what they do, then you can sell them things. You can come up with proper messaging. So I went through that, and I started working in the athletic department at my school. I was a student assistant on the basketball team. And after that, I went off to the University of Memphis and worked there for a year and a half in the athletic department, finished my schooling, and moved. That's when my parents got divorced. I moved back to be with my mom and help, I thought I was mentally taking care of her. And I started working, I started coaching again for 2 years. And then I got a job at the University of Pittsburgh, and I was the athletic marketing assistant. So I had an office in what was then Pitt Stadium, looking outside, and I felt like I had conquered the town, because here's a local boy who was selling advertising into football games and basketball games, and as well as I used to find sponsorships for volleyball and gymnastics and wrestling. So it was working with all the athletes who I was 23 and 24. They weren't much younger than I was, and but I'm out there in a suit and doing all those things, and I loved it. I loved every minute of it, and I did that for a year and a half. And an opportunity came up, and was healthy the whole time. An opportunity came up for me to go to Miami and work for the Orange Bowl. Not just not the place, but the game, the bowl game, and then the parade is separately, but it was in the same office. I worked on the bowl game, and when I went there in 1997, early 1997, I thought, what do 25 people do year-round for one game? Well, after a week there, I thought, how are these 25 people, which I'm one of, are going to pull off one game? Because I learned about all the events and all the team travel and all. I was in merchandising and licensing, and everybody worked events. So like everybody was in operations. I didn't show up to an event like, I'm the merchandising and marketing guy. No, you showed up at an event and you had a job. Even if I was standing there overseeing, making sure people getting out of their cars at the valet knew where they were going, everybody had a job. So it was such a team effort there, and we did some amazing things over a year. I got to meet more famous people, more famous football players. Dan Marino, who I had met as a child and had been at his had won an award at his golf outing in Pittsburgh. He wrote me a letter of recommendation to get the job in Miami. He was still at that.
Nice.
Yeah. He was 13 years into his career, still a legend in Miami as he is today. Prior to retiring and being in the Hall of Fame, but He helped me get that job, and I loved it. And I went from there to Las Vegas and helped put on, excuse me.
It's a common thing for Americans to move around. Like, it's not very unusual or to switch between the cities in the country, or?
It is, but for me at that time, it would eventually, after many years, I would figure something out. Like I've said to you many times, I love to be part of a team. But I would learn years later, I like to be part of a team as long as it's functioning well and I'm allowed to grow. If something felt stagnant, I wanted to move on. So I was telling myself I was moving on to move up, because I went from Pitt to Miami, and then I knew the thing in Las Vegas was just a 3-month, 4-month gig, and then I was going to go be from assistant director of marketing. I was looking at director of marketing jobs in college, and I had it down to El Paso, Texas, or South Orange, New Jersey, Seton Hall or UTEP. And I picked New Jersey because of a girl. And I don't know where my life. Yeah, I don't know where my life would have gone had I gone to El Paso in 1997 or 1998. I can only imagine. But I went to New Jersey. I was only there a year. I got fired. I didn't know
why.
At the time. I didn't know why. But within a year or two, I understood. Someone was undermining me to then get the contract. I worked for a company that provided marketing to the college, and we were in year 3 of a 3-year contract. And from day one, my boss told me, all you have to do is everything they say and get them to sign up for another year. But then everything this person did, and he's the only person in my book that I don't say nice things about. And I'm not going to repeat his name. They can read the book. Everybody else in my book is a hero. I don't talk about my bad times or people who mistreated me. But being that I was at Seton Hall University in host communications for such a short amount of time, I believe it was... I needed the context to understand what this person did to me. And it wasn't personal. What happened was they had been targeting colleges in that area, and they were all in the last year of their contract, and then they created a company that took those contracts to their own company. So they were pulling the contracts away from the company I was working for. So him being one of the pirates, them being one of the pirates, which is also the mascot of the Seton Hall Pirates, him being one of the pirates to steal the contracts, they were going off and they took those contracts. So I was doomed from day one. I didn't know it. So I was fighting to do that.
Yeah, okay, got it. And
Can we pause for a moment?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.